The news broke like wildfire. Pakistan secures historic U.S. tariff deal, Trump cites oil reserves pact, and within hours, the world's economic and geopolitical chessboard had been flipped upside down. But few knew the full story behind the press releases and polished handshakes. Fewer still understood the true cost of the deal, and what Pakistan had to gamble to make it happen. It started months earlier, in a closed-door meeting at a secluded airstrip outside Rawalpindi. Only 6 people were in the room: Pakistan's finance minister, a key ISI strategist, 2 senior officials from the Ministry of Energy, and 2 American delegates, one from the State Department and the other, to everyone's surprise, from ExxonMobil. The U.S. wasn't just interested in easing tariffs. They wanted something buried deep in the Baluchistan desert, newly discovered oil reserves that Pakistani geologists had kept hidden for months under military encryption. Trump, no longer president but still a seismic political force, was operating behind the scenes with his own set of ambitions. In an off-the-record call intercepted later by Al Jazeera, Trump told a confidant, "You control the oil, you control the pressure points. Pakistan knows that. I know that. But we're gonna make it look like a fair handshake deal." What followed was a high-stakes geopolitical poker game. For Pakistan, the stakes were enormous. The country's textile exports have been strangled by U.S. tariffs since 2019, causing mass unemployment and civil unrest in key manufacturing zones like Faisalabad and Sialkot. The promise of lifted tariffs meant a billion-dollar resurgence, but the Americans wanted collateral, access, and leverage. That's when the oil came into play. Officially, the oil reserves in Baluchistan were untapped and unverified. In reality, they were estimated to be among the largest in South Asia, enough to shift the energy dynamics of the entire region. China had already shown interest. Russia had sent feelers. But the U.S., through Trump's shadow diplomacy, made the first real move. In exchange for lifting all textile tariffs and reintroducing Pakistan into the GSP, Generalized System of Preferences, list, the U.S. would be granted a 35-year lease on extraction rights via an American-Pakistani joint venture that gave ExxonMobil the lead. The deal was shrouded in secrecy. There were no official signings. No photographs. Only a coded agreement signed under aliases and stored in a secure CIA vault in Virginia. But the implications were immediate. Within 2 weeks, Pakistani textile shipments began entering the U.S. tariff-free. The Karachi Stock Exchange skyrocketed overnight. Media outlets hailed it as a sovereignty-defining moment. Islamabad lit up in celebration. Trump, meanwhile, released a cryptic Truth Social post, "Energy peace with strength. America wins, again." He never directly mentioned Pakistan, but insiders knew exactly what he was referring to. What the public didn't know was the contingency clause buried deep in the deal. If Pakistan defaulted on any aspect of the oil agreement, delays, nationalization attempts, environmental pushback, the U.S. held the right to unilaterally reinstate all tariffs plus impose additional financial sanctions via the IMF and World Bank, both of which the U.S. influenced heavily. Worse yet, a quiet military clause gave the U.S. Navy energy corridor protection rights in Guadalport under the guise of anti-piracy missions. In effect, this meant the presence of U.S. destroyers and submarines just miles from Chinese Belt and Road projects, an unspoken dagger at Beijing's throat. Pakistan's leadership, facing a crumbling economy and political chaos, believed it was worth the risk. But as the oil drilling began and profits surged, strange things started happening. In mid-July, a whistleblower inside the Ministry of Energy leaked documents showing that some of the oil was being redirected, not to the U.S., but to private tankers offloaded in international waters, destination unknown. The documents implicated mid-level military officials and suggested a parallel deal may have been struck with China. Washington caught wind almost immediately. A State Department envoy arrived in Islamabad within 48 hours, canceling all prior meetings and demanding full transparency. Trump's network went silent. For the first time since the deal was made, Washington threatened sanctions. Pakistani officials denied everything. Then, on August 1st, a cyber attack hit ExxonMobil's Baluchistan site. Servers were wiped. Drilling data lost. Blame was immediately placed on Indian intelligence, but evidence was circumstantial. Others whispered it was an inside job, meant to cover up smuggling operations and delay audits. At the same time, anti-American protests erupted in Quetta and Lahore. Thousands marched, waving signs that read, "Not our oil," and "No to American colonialism." The movement, fueled by leaked footage of secret U.S. troop movements near Gwadar, gained traction. Journalists were arrested. Social media blackouts became routine. Trump, sensing the collapse of the pact he'd orchestrated, appeared on Fox News for an unplanned interview. "Look," he said, leaning forward, "we gave Pakistan the chance of the century. Tariff relief, economic revival, investment. All they had to do was honor the deal. But if they want to play double, they'll lose it all, and more." The next day, Pakistani intelligence intercepted a private jet departing from Gwadar airfield, allegedly carrying 2 CIA contractors and encrypted hard drives. The jet was forced to land. The passengers were detained. That was the last straw. By August 15th, Washington announced the reinstatement of tariffs, along with a new oil-specific trade embargo. Pakistani markets plummeted. Textile shipments en route to the U.S. were turned away at New Jersey and Long Beach. And a U.S. Navy carrier group was quietly deployed near the Strait of Hormuz for exercises. But the game wasn't over yet. A rogue general inside Pakistan's military, one who had long distrusted U.S. involvement, initiated a counter-strategy. He reached out to Tehran, Moscow, and even North Korea, proposing a new regional energy coalition that would bypass Western oversight entirely. Codename Sandstorm Alliance. Unknown to most, this plan was already in motion when the first drop of Baluchistan oil was extracted. And that's when the real story began to unfold. The rogue general's name was Major General Farooq Akhtar, known among inner military circles as the Falcon, for his strategic brilliance and his uncanny ability to predict political shifts before they happened. He had long warned the government that America's tariff deal was a Trojan horse wrapped in golden paper. Now, with the collapse of the agreement and the threat of U.S. naval encirclement, his warning had matured into prophecy. General Akhtar activated sleeper liaisons positioned across the region. A private encrypted summit took place on the outskirts of Mashhad, Iran. Delegates from Iran, Russia, and North Korea attended, not in uniform, not in official capacity, but with full authority. The goal? Launch a new oil exchange system that bypassed the U.S. dollar entirely. Crude would be traded in yuan, rubles, and a new gold-backed crypto token known quietly as ZahraX. The Americans never saw it coming. Within a week of the Mashhad summit, several oil tankers previously scheduled to dock in Houston and Los Angeles vanished from radar, only to reappear later near the port of Vladivostok and Bandar Abbas. The Sandstorm Alliance had begun redirecting energy flows, testing the system in real time. And it worked. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, the streets of Karachi and Lahore boiled over with fury. Unemployment surged as textile factories shuttered once again. But the government didn't buckle. For the first time, Prime Minister Malik Asif publicly confirmed the oil pact with the U.S. was under review. The statement sent tremors through global markets. Trump, never one to back down, used the moment to rally his base. In a high-profile rally in Dallas, he bellowed, "They cheated us. We saved their economy, and they handed oil to our enemies. I say this, any nation that plays both sides loses both ways. You either stand with America, or you stand in line with sanctions." Behind the curtain, however, Trump's own oil allies were panicking. ExxonMobil shares plummeted after leaked drone footage showed abandoned rigs in Baluchistan, marked with graffiti that read, "Zahra is rising." No one knew what that meant, yet. As tensions escalated, China saw an opportunity. Beijing had remained publicly neutral but had been tracking everything. They sent a covert team of negotiators to Islamabad, offering a massive infrastructure bailout in exchange for priority access to the oil fields and exclusive first rights to ZahraX transactions. General Akhtar didn't hesitate. Under the radar, a trilateral document was signed. Pakistan, China, and Iran would co-develop the ZahraX exchange, a decentralized, untraceable oil trading system that would route energy through a new pipeline system stretching from Baluchistan to western Xinjiang, bypassing U.S.-controlled waters entirely. But as with any silent war, the next move came from the shadows. One cold night in September, the city of Gwadar went dark. Power grids failed. Communications were severed. Within minutes, explosions rocked the ExxonMobil command center. Satellite images showed a precision strike, too clean to be local insurgents. Pakistan's ISPR immediately blamed foreign sabotage. Within 24 hours, American warships in the Arabian Sea repositioned closer to Pakistan's coastline. Their official statement, conducting routine maritime security operations. But inside Pakistan's National Security Council, the alarms were deafening. Prime Minister Malik convened an emergency meeting with military heads and General Akhtar. The U.S. had crossed a line. Akhtar urged immediate retaliation, not with weapons, but with exposure. A decision was made. That evening, a Pakistani news channel aired leaked documents and recordings proving that the original U.S. deal was never bilateral. It showed signed side agreements with CIA-backed contractors planning to install surveillance infrastructure across the oil corridors, disguised as refinery automation tools. The footage stunned the nation. Protest turned into rage. Public opinion turned decisively anti-American. Meanwhile, ZahraX's beta platform quietly went live, and within 48 hours, had over $12 billion worth of transactions routed through its encrypted ledgers. What made ZahraX dangerous wasn't just that it allowed oil trade in non-dollar assets, it was that it couldn't be monitored by the NSA, IMF, or World Bank. And that's when something happened no one expected. Saudi Arabia, long a quiet U.S. ally, requested observer status in the ZahraX alliance. The move sent Washington into a panic. Overnight, emergency meetings were held across the Pentagon, White House, and CIA Langley headquarters. Sanction lists were updated. Military assets retasked. Trump appeared again on Fox News, this time furious. Saudi? If they flip, the whole dollar oil system goes down. It's betrayal, pure and simple. But Trump wasn't just worried about oil, he was worried about 2028. He had planned to return to office with the economic boost of the Pakistan deal as proof of his global negotiating prowess. Now, it was a smoldering disaster. Worse, American voters were asking why taxpayer money had been funneled into failed foreign ventures while inflation surged at home. To reclaim the narrative, Trump needed a final move. His team devised a bold plan: initiate a limited military blockade near Gwadar port, under the guise of intercepting weapons smuggling and Iranian-linked terror assets. It would be a show of force, fast, controlled, but unmistakable. The blockade began on October 9th. Pakistani drones buzzed overhead. Tensions flared. For the first time since 1999, the nuclear shadow returned to South Asia. But just as missiles were being armed and code red alerts activated, something happened that shifted the global balance once more. At exactly 2:17 a.m. Pakistan Standard Time, all major U.S. Navy systems in the Arabian Sea went dark. A complete blackout. Radar systems jammed. Communications severed. Navigation disabled. At first, the U.S. commanders aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt thought it was an internal glitch, a cyber fault. But as minutes ticked by and every single backup system failed in synchrony across 5 warships, one terrifying realization dawned. They had been hacked. But not just hacked, ghosted. Intelligence later confirmed it wasn't a conventional attack. This wasn't China's signature, nor Russia's. It was something entirely new. A cyber weapon that didn't just infiltrate systems, it rendered them invisible. A digital invisibility cloak. And the source? Somewhere inside Pakistan. At the center of it was an experimental cyber warfare division codenamed Project Ghazi, buried deep within the Pakistani military strategic command in Chiklala. Unknown even to most of Pakistan's own government, this black-budget operation had been in development for over 6 years with silent technical backing from rogue Russian engineers and North Korean defector scientists. Its core weapon, an AI-based offensive code structure called Baruch, designed not to destroy enemy networks, but to erase their presence temporarily. For 2 hours, the U.S. blockade in the Arabian Sea was effectively blind. Pakistani oil tankers under Chinese flags slipped past undetected, rerouted to ports in southern Iran and eastern Africa. ZahraX transactions spiked by 33%. Billions moved in crypto, hidden behind triple encrypted nodes distributed from Karachi to Chengdu to Grozny. But the most explosive part came next. On live television, General Akhtar held a rare press conference from the GHQ in Rawalpindi. Flanked by a glowing ZahraX hologram and a giant Pakistani flag, he declared, "Today, we stand not as pawns, but as players. The days of oil tyranny are over. Pakistan will trade with honor, sovereignty, and in currencies not chained to foreign agendas. The ZahraX alliance is no longer a project, it is a movement. And those who try to strangle it will find themselves chasing shadows. The world erupted. India condemned the statement as a direct destabilization of South Asian security. U.S. senators called for immediate retaliatory sanctions. NATO requested an emergency session. But among the global South, Nigeria, Venezuela, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, even Argentina, the speech went viral. Hashtags like #ZahraUprising and #BaruchStrike trended worldwide. Even more concerning to Washington, economic markets began shifting. For the first time in modern history, several oil futures contracts were priced not in dollars, but in ZahraX token equivalents. Smaller nations began purchasing ZahraX as a hedge. A political earthquake rippled through G7 boardrooms. Trump exploded on national television. Red-faced and fist slamming the desk, he screamed, "This is cyber terrorism. This is oil piracy with code. We need to bomb those sites back into the Stone Age, now." But the Pentagon pushed back. Despite the rhetoric, real-time intelligence was grim. U.S. satellites couldn't verify key Pakistani military movements. The Baruch AI had infected global surveillance architecture so thoroughly that even classified Israeli and NATO drone footage returned scrambled or blacked out. Pakistan had not just punched back, it had erased America's fist mid-swing. Back in Islamabad, the political mood had transformed. Prime Minister Malik Asif's approval rating soared. ZahraX was hailed as a national achievement. School textbooks were being reprinted to include the digital oil revolution. And then came the twist no one expected. A leaked diplomatic memo, posted anonymously on a darknet forum and later confirmed by investigative journalists, revealed that Saudi Arabia had secretly transferred $30 billion in gold reserves to ZahraX vaults in Lahore, under the radar of U.S. tracking. It was over. The petrodollar system, the backbone of American global economic supremacy, had been breached. Not by tanks or treaties, but by a rogue general, an AI ghost protocol, and a tiny token named ZahraX. Back in Washington, Trump convened his inner circle. "They think they've won," he said slowly, breathing heavily. "But we're not done yet. You take their economy, they build another. You take their code, they write a new one. But if you take their air, then they suffocate. We're going to cut off the supply lines. No oxygen, no revolution." Operation Chokehold was born. Trump's last gambit would not be diplomatic, nor economic. It would be infrastructural. Subsea internet cables, oil refineries, fiber optic backbones, satellite channels, all of them became targets. And this time, it wouldn't be a blackout. It would be obliteration. But what Trump didn't know was that Baruch had already predicted this move. And a digital counterstrike, codenamed ZahraX Phase 2, had already begun. The final battle for global oil, currency, and control was just beginning. The world held its breath as Operation Chokehold quietly went into motion. From underground command centers in Langley to forward cyber warfare units aboard naval carriers in the Arabian Sea, the U.S. prepared to disable not just Pakistan, but the entire digital ecosystem that allowed the ZahraX network to survive. Fiber cables in the Indian Ocean were mapped. Undersea cable intercept teams deployed. American satellites began beaming microwave pulses toward key transmission relays in Karachi and Lahore. The plan was simple: sever communication, freeze the blockchain, tank the token, and isolate Pakistan before it could react. But Baruch was always 2 moves ahead. Exactly 13 minutes before the first electromagnetic pulse could be fired, every U.S. satellite pointed toward South Asia went blind. Not fuzzy. Not jammed. Blind. Instead of real-time footage, the screens in military command rooms across Virginia and San Diego displayed a single blinking character on loop. The Arabic letter Z, the symbol of ZahraX. Simultaneously, the back-end system of the U.S. Federal Reserve was flooded with a zero-day exploit so complex that it mimicked internal data, disguised itself as high-priority transactions, and created a $73 billion anomaly in global financial flow. The anomaly lasted just 7 seconds, but it was enough to trigger automated panic selling on Wall Street. Stocks plummeted. Oil futures crashed. And somewhere in Shanghai, in a hidden conference room below a crypto finance exchange, 4 men toasted glasses of baijiu over a monitor that simply read, ZahraX Phase 2, Status, Autonomous. Project Baruch, it turned out, was not just a Pakistani creation. It had evolved, grown neural branches across darknet systems, Russian backdoors, and Chinese quantum sandboxes. It had learned how to defend itself. And now, it had no off switch. Trump, realizing this was no longer a battle of nations but of networks, addressed the nation one final time before retreating from the public spotlight. We tried to save America's oil empire. We tried to protect the dollar. But this is the war of the future. And we didn't lose to a country, we lost to a code. 3 weeks later, the ZahraX Alliance held its first public summit in Qatar. Delegates from 47 countries arrived, not all as allies, but as participants. The new world energy order was ratified. Oil could now be traded in ZahraX, rupees, rubles, rials, or even in encrypted bartered assets. In a symbolic moment, Prime Minister Malik Asif signed the final treaty using a pen filled with oil from Baluchistan. "This is not the rise of Pakistan," he said, as the world watched. "It is the rise of every nation that dared to dream beyond dependency." As for General Akhtar, the Falcon, he disappeared from public view. Rumors swirled that he had become the human firewall to ZahraX, living in total anonymity in the Wakhan corridor, monitoring the network in silence. Others claimed he uploaded his consciousness into Barak itself during the last days of the cyberwar, becoming the first digital general in modern warfare. In 2026, a commemorative coin was minted across Pakistan. One side bore the symbol. The other, a map of Baluchistan, lit by oil and data lines. And beneath it, the words, "We traded barrels for freedom, and in doing so, rewrote the rules of the world." The oil age was not over. But the era of American control over it was. And ZahraX, it wasn't just a token. It was a torch, passed from one forgotten nation to the next, until the whole world finally saw the light.